My name is Randy Williams, and in this second half, we're going to be talking some more about the Wing Chun footwork. We're going to be doing a footwork pattern that will help you develop your skills of using the footwork in conjunction with various hand motions. Then we're going to be talking about some of the combat theory of Wing Chun. For example, we're going to be going into the centerline theory, the cutting angle, and the concept of reference. After that, we're going to be talking a little bit about what we call complex motions, and finally, the use of the Rattan ring for the development of whirlpool energy. All right, a simple footwork pattern you can practice to remind yourself of all the different bits of footwork and to keep them sharp would be to pivot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then step out and do step slide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot, then step through. 1, 2, 3. Then retreat. 1, 2, 3. Then go into the triangle stance. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pivot through and go into the seat ma. Step, circle, slide. Step, circle, slide. Pivot through, fix the stance. Brace forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Outside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now if I do that with a yang motion like Feng Sao, for example, it would look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot. Step through. 1, 2, 3. Retreat. 1, 2, 3. Triangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot through. Seat ma. 1, 2, 3. Pivot through. Fix the stance. Front brace. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Outside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. To do the Tan Sao, which is a yin motion with that pattern, we'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Look at the 45-degree angle. Pivot through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot through. Step through. 1, 2, 3. Retreat. 1, 2, 3. Triangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot through. Seat ma. 1, 2, 3. Pivot through. Fix the stance. Front brace. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Outside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can see that I can combine them together and do the Moi Kwan Sao, which is a combination of both. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot. Step through. 1, 2, 3. Retreat. 1, 2, 3. Triangle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pivot through. Seat ma. 1, 2, 3. Pivot through. Fix stance. Front brace. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back brace. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Outside face. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that same pattern can be practiced for all yin blocks, all yang blocks, and all complex motions, including complex attacks like Tanda. All right, next I want to talk about what I call the concept of reference, meaning the way we position our own hands and feet in relation to our own body and in relation to the center line. Now, when I use the Choma stance pivot, I create a circular power in front of me. So if you would imagine on the floor in front of me, if I had a large arc painted on the floor right in front of me, and that arc was bisected by a straight line right down the middle in front of my nose.
Now, when I pivot, I create power that travels along that arc. So as my hand moves along the arc with the pivot, every bit of the arc up to and including the center line would be positive or forward yang energy. In other words, all the way from the base to the center line, I've got positive forward energy. We call that yang power. Now, once I pass the center, you can see that my hand is now coming away from the center line in a receiving or negative form of power we call yin power. So everything up to and including the center line forward is yang. Back from the center line is yin. Now what I'll do is begin to latch on to those two bits of the power arc to create positive or negative power behind my hand motion. Certain motions in Wing Chun, like the punch, latch onto the positive side of the power arc. These motions are called yang motions. Now they focus on the center line because the center line is the ultimate apex of that power arc. It's like when a golfer swings. You don't want to hit the ball at this point of the swing, you want to hit it at the bottom. But once you get to the bottom, the club's coming up away from the ball again. So you'll be losing out on that bit of power once it passes the center. The same idea when we punch. We want to punch to the ultimate point of power, gathering speed, and then punching out on that ultimate apex of power. Now similarly, but backwards, if I want to receive in a pulling motion or a blocking motion, I want to latch onto the negative or the descending side of the power arc. So motions that start from the center and work their way backwards are called yin motions. Motions like tan sao or lan sao, wu sao are all motions that latch onto the negative side of the power arc. So what happens is we've got to determine which motions are yin and which are yang. Now in the Sifu Tao form, all motions reference to what I call the self-center line, or a line radiating straight ahead of me. That means the punch is referenced to that line, so is the tan sao, so is the wu sao, and all other motions referenced in one way or another to that line. But once I get to the Chum Kyu form, I start to pivot my stance. So how do I know which motions go where? Obviously, I can't pivot and do a tan and punch on the same line, so how do I know where my hand should go? Well, that's where the concept of reference comes in. Because at the beginning of the second form, which is called Chum Kyu, we learn to punch straight at the same spot we always punched at. In other words, before we learn to pivot, we punch dead ahead with our knuckles referenced straight onto the center line. Even when we start to pivot, though, that punch continues forward on that line. We focus to the same point in space that we did before, except for the fact that the pivot allows my punch to go a little bit further forward. So what happens is we learn that the yang motions, like a punch, go straight ahead to the same spot they would have gone to regardless of a pivot. But yin motions, like tan sao and wu sao, which in the Sifu Tao form will reference right under the nose, will continue to reference right under the nose. They'll latch onto the descending side of the power arc. So when I do tan sao, it follows my nose. So it's as if the center line that existed in Sifu Tao for yin and yang motions split when I pivot. Half of it stays where it was before, the other half of it moves with the same part of my body that it referenced to before. Now the yin motions will stay referenced to that moving self-center line. The yang motions will stay referenced to the non-moving center line. So what will happen then is I'll be able to do complex motions, motions that combine one yin and one yang together with one stance motion powering both. Now a list of the yang motions and the yin motions would be like this. Pak sao is a yang motion. Gum sao is a yang motion. Jam sao and bong sao are all examples of yang motion, all referencing dead ahead. Yin motions include tan sao, gang sao, Yun sao, loi jet sao, ngoi jet sao, wu sao, lan sao, and others. Now you notice there's probably a lot more yin motions than there are yang as far as defenses are concerned. That's because we like to simultaneously block and strike in Wing Chun. We prefer to do that with complex attacks like Tanda, Gangda, Hinda, Changdai Jian, Loi Jatta, Jingjian, Ngoi Jatta, Ban Sao, Gangda, Landa Chauki, Wuda Changjian, and others. Now another thing that happens is, conveniently, this motion will be referenced 45 degrees off the center line, which is where my opponent will be. As I'll be explaining to you later, the center line is the connection of my core to my opponent's core. And that's where my blows or any yang motion will be focused, on that center line. So the yin motion will conveniently be 45 degrees off that line that will enable me to create the cutting angle that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this tape. So keep in mind that in the concept of reference, it teaches us that yang power motions should stay referenced to the center line, meaning the connection between you and your opponent, whereas the yin motions will stay referenced to the self-center line, right in front of your own nose. All right, next I want to talk about what we call complex motions. That means motions that are simultaneous two movements of the hands with one stance movement that powers both. In other words, because of the yin-yang structure created by a stance pivot, I have my choice of doing a yin motion with the stance or a yang motion with the stance. But if I want to, I can use one stance pivot to power both a yin and a yang motion. Now this is what I call a complex defensive motion, because I've got two defensive hands, one yin, the tan, and one yang, the bong sao. The yin hand is being powered by the descending side of the power arc. The yang hand is being powered by the ascending side of the power arc, so that they can be done simultaneously. Now, other complex defensive motions include Loi Quan Sao, inside rolling hands block, which is a combination of the yin Hin Sao and the yang Jam Sao. We also have Gang Jam Sao, which is a combination of the yin Gang Sao and the yang Jam Sao. And we have Tan Pak Sao, which is a combination of the yin Tan Sao and the yang Pak Sao. Now next we move into complex attacks. If I can do a yang block at the same time as a yin block, I could do a yang attack the same way. So I could do a motion like Tan Da, meaning tan and punch. Gang Da, low sweep block and punch. Loi Jat Da Jing Jian, meaning inside jerking hand and vertical palm strike. Ngoi Jat Da Fan Sao, meaning outside jerking hand and chop. Wu Da Chang Jian, meaning rear guarding hand and spade palm strike. Lan Da Chao King, meaning bar arm, uppercut, or a variety of others. You can mix them and match them as you like. In other words, you could take the Hin Sao and put it together with Chang Dai Jian, or you could take the Tan Sao and put it together with the chop, or you could take the Gang Sao and put it together with the spade palm attack. Any which way you like to mix and match. All right, not only can we execute a simultaneous double block or a simultaneous block and strike, but in Wing Chun we can also execute a simultaneous block, strike, and kick, or double block and kick. These motions are called complex kicking defenses or complex kicking attacks. In other words, a complex kicking defense takes a normally yin-yang complex defensive motion and adds a kick to it. A complex kicking attack involves what would normally be a complex attack and adds a kick to that motion. All right, one of the advantages of complex motion is it allows us to give a simultaneous attack and defense. Now what can happen is, when Mark gives me the jab, rather than going block and then punch in a 2-count motion, I could get the whole job done in one syllable by going block and punch. So in a way, we're saving one syllable of time, as opposed to 1 and 2, I'm getting 1. All right, in a complex kicking defense, what I might do is if Mark were to grab my lead hand and give me a punch, rather than just using the bong sao by itself, which would enable me to defend against his punch, I might do a simultaneous bong and kick, which would also enable me to attack back during that same syllable of motion, rather than having to wait until a follow-up syllable. All right, as an example of a complex kicking attack, what I would do is, as Mark gives me that jab, I would use the ngoi jet da fun sao and simultaneously chop and kick. So what happens here is I take and block the strike and simultaneously block, chop, and kick. All right, next I'd like to talk to you about what I call the cutting angle, which is a 45-degree angle that's used to deflect by cutting diagonally into the opponent's oncoming strike, rather than to try to cut directly across its path. Now in Wing Chun, we try to combine the elements of hard and soft. Now what I mean by hard and soft is, if a punch comes in and I were to block it on a 90-degree angle, I'd call that a hard block because it relies on force against force. It relies on my block being stronger than his punch. Now if I use the ultimate in soft blocks, I'd be going 0 degrees and that would get me hit. So that's not the answer. But what Wing Chun chooses to do is to take and blend the elements of hard and soft together to create a power that's better than either hard or soft. It would be as if I gave you a rock and a sock and I told you, use these for a weapon. Well, the rock you could probably throw or hold it in your hand and hit someone with it. And the sock, you might be able to flick it at someone or maybe strangle them with it, or if you'd been wearing it for a few days, it might be an effective weapon. But other than that, the sock couldn't do much. But if you took the rock and dropped it inside the sock, now you'd have a weapon that was combining the elements of hard and soft that would be more powerful than either of the two elements individually. Now what I try to do then is take and blend that 90 degree with the 0 degree and create what I call the cutting angle, which is a 45-degree motion. Now that 45-degree angle tends to shear or cut into the opponent's punch, so it has a deflective power to it. So as his punch comes in, mine deflects his. Now all Wing Chun blocking motions rely on the cutting angle in one way or another. The basic pak sao, which is the first block we did today, cuts into the opponent's strike at a 45-degree angle. Now this 45-degree angle gives us 3 advantages. I told you about the power as far as blending hard and soft, but it also adds an element of timing. Now, if Mark's punch were coming very slowly, if I were to be doing the pak sao motion at a 90-degree angle, I'd have to time my motion so that it landed right as his came in. Because if I got there too early, I'd get hit. And if I got there too late, I'd get hit. So I need to be very precise and be there right on time. Well, if I go at a 45-degree angle, if I get there early, I'm going to catch him here. And if I get there late, it'll be a little bit later, but I'll still catch him. The reason being, I'm on a permanent collision course with this punch. It's not a matter of trying to meet at any one coordinate. All right, another way of explaining the 45-degree cutting angle and how it relates to timing would be if you imagine that I were holding a flashlight in my hand. Now, if I were holding that flashlight at a 90-degree angle in relation to my body, and Mark's punch came real slow, you could see that it's not lit up yet. It's still not lit up. It's still not, now it would be lit up, only at that last bit. But if I were to hold that flashlight at a 45-degree angle in relation to my body, his fist is lit up right from the start, and it's continuing to be lit up throughout the course of the punch. All right, the 45-degree angle that we use to create the cutting angle in our blocking techniques is called the immovable elbow moving line. Now you have to be careful how you translate that term, because it does not mean the immovable elbow moving line. It means the immovable elbow moving line. There is a difference. One way would mean an immovable elbow, would mean we couldn't move our elbow anywhere, which is not the case, because movements like bong sao and punch, tan, in every movement, the elbow moves forward and backward along this line. What we mean is that the line itself is immovable, so that the line is followed on my elbow with punching, blocking, the pak sao follows that line, the punch follows that line, the uppercut follows that line. All of those motions use the immovable elbow moving line. Now the third advantage to using this line is its built-in trapping effect. When Mark punches, if I use the immovable elbow moving line, it enables me to cut into his center of gravity and have more effect on his balance. Not only that, but enabling me to control the center line so that his other hand can't hit me. It's a built-in trapping effect. Now, if I were to block on a 90-degree angle, my hand has really no effect on his body. I'm just moving his arm back and forth. But by blocking in at a 45-degree angle, I latch onto his center of gravity, giving me more control. All right, next I'm going to talk to you about the centerline theory, which is really the backbone of the Wing Chun system. The centerline, which is called zhongxin, is the way that the Wing Chun man determines exactly how he's going to block and or strike and or kick. Everything that a Wing Chun man does is dependent on the centerline and his position in relation to the centerline. Now, before I can go on and explain how the centerline is used, I need to explain what the centerline is itself. And the first thing you need to know is you need to know what we call the mother line is. Now, the mother line is when Mark opens his stance. If you were to imagine that there was a line passing straight through the top of his head and right down through his body, coming out the bottom and stuck into the floor, that axis of rotation, or that core of his body, would be what we call the mother line. So what the center line is the connection between Mark's mother line and mine. Now face me in a fighting position. In other words, if I took that line that passed through the top of Mark's head right through his body and my own line, mother line, and connected them through a plane, that would be what we call the center line. So the center line isn't really a line at all. It's a plane. It's the connection of my core and Mark's core. Now, the center line has nothing to do with the front of my body, the side of my body, only the core of my body. For example, if I were to turn without shifting my center of gravity, the center line has remained unchanged. It's right between Mark and I, just where it was before. And if I were to hop back this way, it would still be unchanged between Mark and myself. The only way that the center line is going to change is if either one of us takes a step so that our core, our actual mother line, shifts, in which case the center line will track that motion and follow us. So it's the connection of us, core to core. Now that itself is the center line. So that needs to be understood clearly before we can go on. All right, the next component of the center line theory is what we call the self-center line. So if you were to imagine that I had painted a stripe right down the front of Mark's body, right down the nose, and right down the front of his body, that would be what we call the self-center line. Now that is not to be confused with the center line itself, which, as you know, is the connection of Mark's core and mine. In this case, the center line is here. So his self-center line always moves with his body. It's like part of him. It's as if there were a stripe painted right on the surface of his body. Now the next component of the center line theory is what we call the attack pyramid. So if Mark extended a punch straight in front of himself, what I would imagine that I see here is a pyramid with its vertices being the tip of the punch at the knuckles, the outside of the shoulder, and Mark's self-center line. So I imagine a pyramid between these 3 points. So I don't look at that punch coming at me as a punch. I like to look at a punch coming at me as being a pyramid structure. And I'll explain why in just a minute. The next thing we want to talk about is what we call a defense pyramid. So if Mark puts up times out, you'll see that there's a pyramid structure, an imaginary pyramid with its vertices at the self-center line, the shoulder, and the tip of the defense pyramid, which in this case is the outer wrist. Now if he were to do Wu Sao, the tip of the pyramid would be here. Bong Sao, the tip of the pyramid would be here. So the pyramid changes. So you can see that Mark can actually generate all different sort of shapes and biases of pyramids with his hand. Now that goes for attack pyramids as well. For example, I can make a long, extended attack pyramid with my fist. Or I can make a short attack pyramid that ends up in the middle. I can do a long attack pyramid that points toward the bottom. Or I can do a short attack pyramid that's off to the side. So I can generate all shapes and biases of attack pyramids. Now the same thing goes for my defense pyramid. If I extend Wu Sao, I have a short stubby pyramid with its tip in the middle. When I extend Tan Sao, the tip is a little bit out to the side. When I do Gang Sao, I cut a long stringy pyramid that goes here, here, and here. When I do Gum Sao, the pyramid is here, here, and here. So I can generate all sorts of shapes and biases of pyramids. Some of them go that way, some of them go this way, some of them go straight ahead, some of them go down, some of them go up. And the trick to this whole game is to decide which pyramid is going to counter which pyramid on his part. Now, when Mark throws a punch at me, what I need to do then is to determine the correct defense pyramid to present that will counter his. Now, if you were to imagine two pyramids coming at each other in space, these two pyramids are headed tip to tip. Well, it's not very likely that they're just going to hit together and go and stop. The chances are those two pyramids are going to carry them off each other in different directions. Depending on which tip was inserted at what point, the pyramids would go off in different directions when they made contact. Now, the same thing goes when an attack and a defense pyramid meet each other in a fight. Because when Mark's pyramid and mine make contact, somebody's going to get pushed that way and somebody's going to get pushed this way. Because they're not going to go and stop when they hit each other. They're going to glide off each other. What we have to do then is determine how to glide his hand. That's where the center line comes in. Now, if you keep in mind that the center line is the connection between my core and Mark's core, in order to use the center line theory efficiently, what I need to do is I need to insert the tip of my defense pyramid between the tip of Mark's attack pyramid and the center line. Now, what this means is, when his punch comes, if I can get my Wu-Sao pyramid, which is right here, between the tip of Mark's attack pyramid, which is right here, and the center line, which is right here, you can see that I've successfully defended against his attack without using muscle, but by using strategic positioning and angulation. Now, what happens when Mark's punch gets between the tip of my defense and the center line? Naturally, he wins, because here's the tip of my defense pyramid, here's the center line, and there's Mark's fist. So I've lost. So it's a battle. It's a constant battle for this center line. Who's going to win? And it's a game of inches. So what happens if I can't physically force Mark's hand across the center line? I can't get him to shear off. Well, I have to remember that I own half the center line. It's not, there's no such thing as his center line, my center line. It's ours. It's the connection of our two cores. So what I can do is I can move my end of the line. So I can say, all right, I can't move the thing, so I'll move the line. Now that I've moved the line, the center line is now here, which places the tip of my defense pyramid between the tip of Mark's defense pyramid and the new center line created by my stance movement. And it's a very little amount of motion that you really need. So if you think about it, all right, here, no one has the line. Right now, Mark has the line. Now, just by doing a slight stance move of about 1 inch or less, I have the line. So it's a very subtle play between the two of us. Who's going to get that line? Now, the basic stance for all Wing Chun kicking is called Tuk Lap Ma, or one-legged stance, independent horse stance. The way we practice the Tuk Lap Ma position is to, first of all, bend the knees, just like you do when you start Yi Ji Kim Young Ma, and open the feet out straight, just like you do at the beginning of the first form. But then, keeping the legs both bent at the same angle, you raise one leg up and hold it as high as you can. Hold that position. Now, the other leg is the same thing. From position, raise the leg as high as you can, and hold it out. All right, in Wing Chun, there are 8 basic forms of kicking, each of which can be done in a variety of different ways. Now, the first basic kick is called Jing Gye, which means vertical kick. Now, the vertical kick is executed by bringing the heel forward on the center line with the foot angled out at about a 45-degree angle, straight ahead. So, to execute the Jing Gye, we snap out the heel on the center line. Now, to advance with the Jing Gye, I turn the front foot out, kick and slide. Out, kick and slide. Out, kick and slide. From the side, that's going to look like this. All right, the next basic Wing Chun kick is called Wang Gye, which means horizontal kick. Now, what I do with the horizontal kick is kick my foot forward on the center line with my toes pointing in the opposite direction, 45 degrees. My shoulders are also turned 45 degrees. So what happens is I snap forward on the center line. Now, to execute this with advancing footwork, I would turn the front foot out, kick, slide. Front foot out, kick, slide. Front foot out, kick, slide. From the side, that's going to look like this. All right, the next kick is also going to use the same 45-degree angle structure that the side kick used on the center line. We use the instep. So this kick is called loi tiu kyo, inward instep kick, the round kick of Wing Chun. Now to execute this with advancing footwork, the front foot out would pivot, kick, pivot, kick. From the side, that's going to look like this. All right, using the straight shoulder structure of the Jinggyuk, I'll use the outward instep to kick in a reverse round kick motion called Ngoi Tiu Gyuk, or outward instep kick. So what I do is snap my foot outward at a 45-degree angle using the instep. So with an advance, that's going to look like this. Now from the side, it's going to look like this. All right, the next kick is a knee strike called Tai Sut, or raising knee. So with the straight shoulder structure of the Jinggyuk, I raise my knee. So to advance, I would turn, come in, with a little bit of a skipping motion. Now from the side, that's going to look like this. All right, the next knee attack uses the 45-degree shoulder structure of the side kick with an outward knee strike. So I would be kicking outward at a 45. So with advancing footwork, I'd be coming through and kicking slightly to the outside. This is called Ngoi Doi Gak Gyuk, or outward diagonal kick. Also using the 45-degree shoulder structure of the side kick, the inward diagonal knee strike, Loi Doi Gak Gyuk, comes in with a knee strike 45 degrees inward. 45 degrees inward. So with advancing footwork, it would look like this, with a small skip. From the side, that's going to look like this. All right, another kick that uses the 45-degree shoulder structure of the Wang Gyuk side kick is called Piu Gyuk, or piercing toe kick. So what I do is drive my toes straight ahead on the center line, straight forward, piercing straight in. Now with advancing footwork, that's going to look like this. From the side, all right, so it can be seen then that all the kicks that we do in Wing Chun are based off the structure of the Jinggyuk front kick and the Wang Gyuk side kick. And each of them covers a similar angle. In other words, the front kick and the side kick cover the same angle. One of them with the toes out, the other with the toes in. Now, the inside and outside instep kick cover the same area, but from two different angles. Outward instep kick, inward instep kick. The knee strike, Tai Sut, goes straight up. The inward knee strike covers the inward 45-degree angle. The outward knee strike covers the outward 45-degree angle. So it can be seen that if I were to use the opposite legs, this front kick and this side kick go to the same place. This reverse round kick and this round kick go to the same place. This outward knee strike and this inward knee strike go to the same place. All right, there is a type of kicking in Wing Chun that we call Mo Ying Gyuk, which means invisible kick. And there are two types of Mo Ying Gyuk. The type of kick that kicks twice without putting the foot down between kicks, and the type of kick that does what we call a jump switch. Now, in the first type of Mo Ying Gyuk, which is kicking twice before putting the foot down, we can do things like front kick up, side kick down. Or we could go side kick up, front kick down. Now, a simple exercise for this would be to stand in position and go front kick up, front kick down, side kick up, side kick down, switch. Front kick up, front kick down, side kick up, side kick down, switch. The second type of Mo Yin Gyuk is called jump switching. So after having used one kick, without putting the foot down between, we make a quick jump and kick again. All right, a simple exercise for developing Mo Yin Gyuk invisible kick skills is to have your partner throw a punch at you, and you respond with front kick up, front kick down. Now you could do that here, front kick up, front kick down. Or you could go side kick up, side kick down, or blend. Front kick up, side kick down, or side kick up, front kick down. Any combination of those. You could also do that backwards. In other words, you could go front kick down, front kick up, or side kick down, side kick up, or blend them together. Front kick down, side kick up, or side kick down, front kick up. All right, to apply the jump switch, what I can do is, after having made a successful kick, I can just jump into a second kick. So if my first kick had been a side kick, I could jump into a front kick and jump again into a knee strike to the body. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the use of the rattan ring to help develop what I call whirlpool energy, or Chun, the ability to use circles of your hands to create straight line power. This is a great tool for that because it kind of forces you to circle your hands. Where you might normally make a real choppy motion with your arm, this ring will enable you to circle your hands, because if you don't circle properly, you'll lose the pressure on the ring and drop it. So for basic motions like gum out, it'll cause you to roll the hands downward as you execute the motion. Now, I'm also going to use bongs out, which rolls either from over the top downward, or the reverse of bongs out, which comes from underneath. Now I can also work my gangs out, low chop block. And you can see the rolling motion real clearly in it. Beans out, circling hand. Sort of trapping the ring with 3 fingers and circling. Jams out, chop block. Lance out, forearm. Or I can even go into complex motions like ngoi kwan out, which is a combination of tan and bong. Loi kwan out, which is a combination of hyun and jam. Or gang jam out. Now I'll start putting some different footwork in with it. For example, I can continue with this circling pattern. I'll go ahead and use gang jam sao to illustrate the point. And I might advance forward with bracing footwork. Or I could use inside facing footwork. Or I could go ahead and outside face. If I wanted to, I could advance forward with siang ma footwork, or retreat with toi ma footwork. So this little tool really helps you develop that whirlpool energy, and I recommend its use. All right, that's all for now. So until next time, this is Randy Williams reminding you to train hard and perfect your Wing Chun skills.
北有太极，南有咏春来形容咏春拳流传之广、练习人之多，一点都不过分。咏春拳为南拳中的一支武术奇葩，是国家发掘保护的武术品种之一。李小龙将咏春拳推向全世界。广东佛山彭南老先生将咏春拳发展到有形与无形之中，随心所欲之境地。咏春拳为内家拳，一招一式都发之内力，以意行气，以气推力，以期达到意气力合一，具有极高的散打实用性。广东佛山彭氏咏春拳套路有初级套路小链头、中级套路寻桥、高级套路标指，器械套路有蝴蝶双刀、6点半棍，还有彭氏咏春拳独有的木人桩练法，是学习武术爱好者不可多得的武术套路。寻桥是咏春拳的终极套路，它以菱形的运动路线和方向，结合咏春拳的攻防手法、步法、腿法等进行演练。它的攻击手法有3推负掌、上中下3绑手，以及针步、弹腰、正侧内踢腿等，是咏春拳向高级套路过渡的必经阶段。